Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Abrnormies podcast, episode 5. I am Sai. Joining me, as always, is Brandur. What's up, mate?
What's up?
Good. And for those of you who are viewing us on YouTube, you will notice there is a third member on screen. That is Andrew. What's happening, man?
Dude, what's going on? Happy to be here. Excited to chat about New Year's and everything else.
Yeah.
Excellent. Good stuff, man. Well, Andrew, do you want to introduce yourself real quick, who you are, what you're about, what you do? It's probably better coming from your lips than ours. And yeah,
Sure.
Let the world know who you are.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I've been working in esports for the last 10 years, also known as electronic sports, basically slang for competitive video games. It means running tournaments and hosting live events and spending a lot of time doing like play-by-play commentary, desk hosting, the same kind of stuff you would see in traditional sports, like football or anything else. The commentators that watch the match and kind of break it down for the fans. I spent most of my career doing that for video games. I owned my own broadcasting studio for a number of years and led that whole operation. And for the last 6 months, I've been more involved in cryptocurrency and blockchain gaming, which has really been blowing up, especially in 2021. And for the last 8 months, I've been working for a company called Sky Mavis that makes the game called Axie Infinity. And it's the #1 NFT blockchain game in the world right now. So I'm the program lead for esports and content creators, but in kind of true startup fashion. I do a lot of stuff. It's a pretty cool, crazy, very rapidly evolving technical world. So yeah, excited to be here. And of course, I've done all sorts of other things outside of that. I wrote a book about my esports experience. I've been through some pretty crazy experiences in terms of accidentally leaving my webcam on one time and streaming myself nude and recovering from that. And all sorts of other various strange dramas of a similar sort. So I've been through the ringer, mate. I'm 32 and super happy to be here. And I met Brandur in September of this year in my trip to Iceland, just kind of for fun on holiday. And here I am back again, actually in Reykjavik right now, enjoying some winter holidays as kind of a workcation.
Yeah. Excellent. Good stuff, man. I mean, you didn't have to dox yourself about leaving the webcam, or no one would have known that, but you brought that up, so I think we have to talk about
book. So it's hard to hide at this point. It's well published and documented.
Yeah. Excellent, man.
All right, so we got a lot to talk about. We want to go into the NFT blockchain, the future of blockchain, and then so how's your house? I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, so for those that don't know or haven't seen the news, there was a super insane fire in Colorado, where I'm from, or at least where I'm living right now. It's kind of hard to process still. This was a really freak kind of one-off event where there was a winter storm warning, and that caused these crazy winds. Where Denver and Boulder are kind of right at the base of this big mountain ridge. So they had giant, like 110 mile per hour winds coming off the mountains. And then that created some really strange circumstances. At first, they thought it was power lines that got knocked down. And I think they're still investigating exactly how it started. But the winds created some sort of a fire and then pushed the fire to spread across this huge field area and then into a residential area. I think right now the tally is at like 1,100 homes destroyed. And they're already clocking it as the most destructive fire financially in Colorado history. It's this area that it engulfed kind of near where I live is very new. Most of it's been built in the last 10 years. So it's a lot of very modern buildings. Most of them still haven't been paid off. The brand new Marriott that just got finished was engulfed and completely destroyed. The hospital caught on fire. My house ended up being actually, I think I'm pretty sure we're still standing, but I'm not sure. The house I used to live in is definitely burned down, which is really crazy to process because there was, we almost didn't leave there. It was a last second decision to move somewhere else. So it almost seems more surreal to think that I might be still standing and being on the edge of the burn zone. But I'm here for another 2 weeks and I still haven't gotten a full report of what the damages look like, because after the fire, it's been a giant, colossal snowstorm. So now there's, snow and stuff everywhere. Roads are still screwed up. Like tractor trailers were overturned on the highway kind of thing. So people even evacuating were having trouble getting out. pretty serious force of nature kind of stuff. You know, I think they said that it's also been a drought season, so it's been particularly dry. So the fields just went up in seconds. I think they were saying that with the winds at the speed they were, when the gusts would kick up, it could engulf an entire football field in like 3 or 4 seconds, something like that. So it's like you think about fire and a tornado at the same time. Yeah, it's like hurricane level winds pushing a fire. It's crazy. It's like apocalyptic shit. There's I saw this really apocalyptic picture of a horse standing outside of this burning barn, and it's just so dark and orange, and it really looks like something out of a horror movie. It's jarring to know that it's all very real. So I'm almost positive my car is either somewhere else or gone or completely mangled at this point, just from wind damage alone. But who knows? It'll be a really fun surprise in 2 weeks when I get home.
Yeah, I'm glad you're safe here in Iceland in a more calm storm.
Yeah, a little windy here, but doesn't compare, I guess. And yeah, it's a weird thing because I almost feel lucky to be away from it in some ways, because there's only so much you can do anyhow. I did just move recently, so I don't know. I maybe a good transition into NFTs and digital stuff. Honestly, this entire year, I've been trying to get rid of more physical stuff. And part of my move was like, all right, what are the things I actually care about? You know, I care about like comfort and access to the internet. So I need a nice laptop. I want a nice phone. I need a nice desktop for production. But really all the things that are sentimental to me and that I care about are either in my brain or in the cloud somewhere. So I feel like I'm lucky to have already been priming myself for this sort of mental stability against this kind of destruction. You know,
we were talking
I can
about
get another birth certificate.
Yeah.
We were talking about a related topic about how wondering how much kids are getting less and less of physical gifts today, and more, you know, they just get something that they open on their iPad using some game, or how that continued to develop.
It certainly has some dark sides to it, right? Like being addicted to screens is not good. And, you know, there's some alarming data out there that who knows what, the jury's not out yet, but some preliminary data about what spending significant time staring at screens does to a young person's developing brain in terms of like the parts that it stimulates and, you know, addictive tendencies and that kind of stuff. Certainly we've heard about, you know, Instagram and these other things that have had a pretty devastating impact, especially for, you know, teenage women and pre-teenage girls that are, you know, growing up and going through the formative years. But there is like a weird silver lining to everything, right? That's kind of how life goes. Everything has this opportunity cost and duality to it. And where there's negative, there's often some weird positive, where even really bad destruction, it's like, well, destruction is a form that breeds creation, right? So that allows you to rebuild sometimes better, stronger. And, you know, you go to an ultimate low to come to an ultimate high, and you look back and go, man, that really sucked. And in the moment, I didn't think I was going to make it, but making it through it was really powerful. And now I feel stronger than ever before. You often hear those kind of stories from people that get over this stuff, but still 1,100 homes, man. That's like some of the aerial footage of neighborhoods. It's just white circles on the ground. It's like literally nothing. It's just,
has there been any loss of life or severe injuries?
That's a good question. There were some missing persons report. I haven't actually looked at the news in the last 24 hours because I've had some strange work stuff that's popped up. But I don't think there were any death reports. There were some casualty, some injuries, I guess. Casualties sounds strong. But I don't think there were any deaths, which is amazing. Especially since some of the areas only had like 10 or 15 minutes to evacuate because it started spreading so quickly. So pretty amazing.
Yeah, good. So tell us more about your work. So what's going on in Axie Infinity?
Yeah, so God, there's so much to unpack here. So I'll try to keep it pretty high level so that everyone can follow along. But from a gaming perspective, what's really cool about implementing blockchain and NFTs is it adds these layers of transparency and decentralization that ultimately give more power to the players. When you look at the Axie economy, most of the money is actually in the hands of the players and being traded by players selling assets back and forth than it is the developer taking it. If you think about video game developers in an analogous manner to like governance structures, they're really just dictatorships where they own all of the resources, and in a lot of cases get to create these unregulated in-game economies with made up game currencies that they completely control, that have, you know, infinite supply and can sort of be manipulated to make you spend more, right? Like there's been a whole transformation of the gaming industry. Free to play, like 10 or 15 years ago, or I guess 10 years ago, was really the beginning of this huge revolution of people don't have to pay for games anymore, and you can just monetize through cosmetics and, you know, kind of upgrades to the game. And then that kind of got hijacked and became the pay to win model. And that became really popular in these mobile games, like the auto battler kind of things. And the key difference is that these games, the play to win games, are designed to be games that have a miserable experience unless you pay money. And if you pay money, it gives you a tangible, noticeable benefit over other players. So you can just put $1 million in and be the most powerful player. That is you know, in the short term, that's really fun for the people spending the money, and then very quickly it gets bored for them, and it ruins the experience for the people that don't have the resources to do that. So who benefits from that system? It's the developer. They get to keep all the money, and when the game goes under and nobody cares about it anymore, that's it. And from a player perspective, all of your money spent is a total sunk cost. You can't transfer it. You can't sell it. It doesn't go to any other games. It's not available on a marketplace. And in most cases, it's against the terms of service to do that. Even in World of Warcraft, there's been a whole sub-economy of gold farmers for the last decade. You know, people in developing countries that have been making a lot of money doing this kind of play to earn model that's now arisen. But in the case of Blizzard, that's totally against the terms of service. If they catch you doing that and selling in-game assets for physical money, that you'll get banned for that. They can just kick you out and say, nope, sorry, see you later, and your stuff's gone.
Why are they against that? What sounds like
well, it's a great question. I guess I can't speak for them. I always have to be careful to say that. I don't exactly know, because from my perspective, that's what we're all about, right? It's an open, free economy where you can sell all of your game assets on our marketplace at any time. So you know, to us, it makes perfect sense. And that value proposition is basically why we've been exploding with users. We've got about 2.5 million daily active users right now. So pretty substantial, especially for the crypto gaming space, because it's so new. That we've kind of broken a large part of that audience of getting people interested in this. But I imagine it goes back to control. I think these game developers have a very kind of old school business model where they're used to just taking most of the money in the ecosystem, because that's how it's always worked. And it's always been this private, we own everything. It's inside of a black box. You're lucky that you pay us for the privilege to have access to this kind of a thing. So now that's flipped on its head, we've developed this play to earn genre where, because basically our take rate is the 5% that we take in the marketplace. Outside of that, the 95% of the rest of the wealth accumulated is in the hands of the players and being traded across them. So when you look at how much money is generated by these massive video games, and if you reduce the take rate from 90% to 5% for the developer, or even 10%, all that money left over creates this really powerful potential to make an economy of, when you play the game, you get rewarded with a token, and then you're able to use that in the game to, in this case, breed Axies together, which burns the token, or you know, you can sell it and cash out and turn it into other tokens or regular currency to pay rent or buy food or do whatever you're going to do. So it's a free to play game, but while you're playing it, you have the ability to earn some tokens, and you own your assets, right? So it's free to play, but you do have to have Axies to play, right? So you have to buy the Axies from another player. We don't sell anything to players. It's only players buying things from other players, and then you breed Axies together to create new ones. So we were like the nexus point that started this whole thing off, and now it's kind of in the hands of the players to breed Axies and sell them to each other.
Yeah, I know that you're very successful. It always happens when somebody is successful. That I've seen now lots of adverts on Facebook using Axie Infinity and saying, comparing their brand new game into how much money can be made from it, as opposed to, oh, you can only make this amount with Axie. But you're onto something. You've created a great thing if people are are using your product, trying to bash it to sell their own.
Totally.
Yeah,
we take it as a compliment mostly. I mean,
definitely.
it is a little frustrating, but you know, it's a sign of being on the bleeding edge. And we've been one of the biggest onboarders of new users into the Ethereum ecosystem, into blockchain in general. I think of those, you know, we've got 2.5 million daily active users. So there's millions of, you know, Axie players that don't necessarily play every day. Some like 50% of them are completely new to cryptocurrency and blockchain. And we've sort of gamified the financial education experience. And the things that warm my heart the most are when people say, I came for the game, I stayed for the economy, and now I've learned about crypto and I'm investing in other tokens. And look, I'm using these decentralized finance tools, and now I'm getting appreciating assets and appreciating wealth. And often these are people that are living in developing countries where they don't even have access to simple financial tools like savings accounts or credit lines. And that is a control mechanism in some of these countries that are poorly managed from a financial perspective, and you know, suffer from dictatorships. Like Venezuela is the great example. They just keep resetting their currency. They set it back to 1, they keep pumping it and adding zeros, and they reset it. Like, these people are living in a financial hellhole where their currency is constantly being inflated and deflated and played around with. And it's like, whatever volatility exists in Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever else, it's objectively more stable than what they're dealing with in their country right now. So getting access to these kind of tools in a way that doesn't require, you know, like uploading an ID or something and having a decentralized savings account. Like, you can get a credit line on the blockchain now just through a smart contract by putting up other crypto collateral. Things like that don't seem like a big deal to those of us, like, you know, in the developed countries where we have good currency and access to financial instruments, but a staggering amount of the world doesn't even have access to this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was trying to explain to a friend of mine the other day one of the aspects of blockchain, that it's like you can add banking onto anything now. Anything can become collateral, and then you can take out loans and, you know.
Well, yeah, your user account now basically is your bank account. And what's cool is you don't have to make different like logins for all these different websites. You just have your crypto address and you go and you sign it, and that allows them to see what's in your wallet. And then you're logged in and you're just using your wallet address as your login identifier. And at any point, someone can just send you crypto to that. And if you're talking about something like the Ethereum ecosystem, where there's all these other tokens and all these decentralized finance tools on top of each other, it becomes really easy for them to talk to each other with this sort of shared protocol. And that interoperability is a really key part of what's being built right now. Like, all this stuff is super bleeding edge. And I think that's why we're starting to see some of the adoption blow up. But on a mainstream level, the UX, the interfaces just aren't quite there yet for the totally normal users to adopt it. But it's coming. I mean, this stuff evolves very, very quickly.
It's a big company. I've had some people who wanted to buy some of my NFTs, but then stranded halfway there, needing to buy Ethereum or something.
Yeah.
So that needs to develop a bit further.
Yeah, it's still the classic. This happens a lot with emerging technology, where it's engineers building products for engineers. And one of the cool things about blockchain, this is really a feature, not a bug. It's all transparent, right? All the code that's on the blockchain, everybody can see the code. So that makes iteration and like evolution very easy. You don't have all these black boxes like you do in the banking world, where everybody has to create their own systems and compete with each other. In blockchain, if someone, you know, so Vitalik said, hey, this is a cool idea for a decentralized exchange, somebody should try to make this. And then some student said, okay, that sounds pretty cool, I'm going to make Uniswap. And then he built it. And then other people were like, huh, that's pretty cool. What if we did this, but put more rewards on it? Okay, let's build Sushi Swap. And it just keeps going down the road. It's scary because it's also good for bad actors, right? They have the ability to just take that and then make an exchange that isn't safe and, you know, isn't good. So it's like anything else. You create a new tool, that tool can be used for good or for bad. But in terms of the needle moving, very smart, innovative young people and students that have ideas can just take what's out there and go, thanks, I'm going to change this a little bit. And all of a sudden I've got the beginning of a brilliant new idea.
Yeah, I'm just conscious that we may have some listeners who are completely they have no idea about blockchain as of yet. So
Sorry.
with you, no. This is what we want to take deep. But could you you could probably do it much more eloquently than me. Could you break down blockchain and how things, apart from that, like NFTs are tokenized, into a few sentences, maybe for the layman term?
Yeah.
2 minutes.
Yeah. No, this is always the challenge, right? Good summary. I got the gift of the gab, so I can use a lot of words to explain something, but cutting it down, I like it. A good challenge here.
Yeah.
Blockchain creates a value proposition that changes the paradigm for the average user. At the highest level, our world right now is very highly centralized. And there's a lot of benefits to that from a currency perspective. It's great to be able to call your bank if you lose your credit card and they can just shut it down and send you a new one. But it gets really scary when services like PayPal can just ban you at any time for any reason and not tell you why. I'm one of those people. I don't know why, but they sent me an email that said you're lifetime banned from PayPal. And I appealed and they said, nope, appeal stands. That's it. Don't talk to us again. Then they froze my money for 180 days in case of fraud. And then I ended up being able to get it back. So that's just a small anecdotal example of how like the centralized world works when it works, but it can very easily keep people down. Blockchain is this decentralized form of finance that has built one of the first trustless kind of systems to allow us to do transactions without a middleman. Bitcoin was the first one. And the real innovation there it allows me to send you money with no middleman in between that holds the money or verifies it. It's verified by a peer-to-peer network of computers that look at all of the different data points being sent to this blockchain, and they do a bunch of really cool algorithmic mathematics that is hard to explain succinctly and slightly over my head. And it creates this consensus mechanism that allows us to build a trustless relationship. I don't have to know anything about you except for your address to be able to send you money. And that's a really cool, powerful thing that has never existed digitally before. We've created systems that look like that from an interface perspective, but it's really key to understand on the back end, being able to do that in a way that doesn't require trusting a middleman is super powerful. So that's like the essence of blockchain at the very highest level. Like, why does all this stuff matter? That's kind of the basis of it all. So blockchain is really about these consensus mechanisms, and Bitcoin is really the best application of it that we've found so far, right? Like money is just a really good use case for a trustless consensus mechanism, if that makes sense. Yeah. Was that layman enough? Sorry.
No, that was good. That was good. Yeah. So where then do NFTs fit in? How would you explain the tokenization of certain things, whether it be a game, a piece of music, a piece of art? How does that correlate with blockchain?
Totally. No, that's a great question and a perfect extension. So Bitcoin was that first application. Bitcoin is very simple in that regard. All it is money, and all we can do is send it to each other. And you can hold it. I'm collecting, that's it. That's all it does. It's a picture. It is almost like digital dollar bills. There's a very smart gentleman named Vitalik Buterin who started as a Bitcoin journalist, who had this idea of like, this is really cool, but I think we could do something more with this. What if instead of this just being money, we turn this into a public good and use the blockchain to build a world computer, a computer that is publicly accessible to anybody that has access to the internet, and it's all on the blockchain, like a public database that anybody can pay to use. And we'll charge people a little bit of cryptocurrency for every transaction, and people can bid. So, if there's more people trying to use it, it'll be a little more expensive. And if there's less people trying to use it, it'll be less expensive. And it'll just be this free market of a world computer that anybody can build applications on top of and use this shared public database. what if we could build the decentralized database of the future? And half the people said, this guy's on drugs. Whoa. And half the people said, this guy's a fucking genius. And it created this big rift. And that's basically how Ethereum was born. Vitalik and a group of other folks came together and started building this. So the Ethereum, that's why there's sort of the two biggest cryptocurrencies. It's Bitcoin and then it's Ethereum. And they're both cryptocurrencies, but they're trying to solve very different problems. Bitcoin is currency, Ethereum is a world computer, and Ethereum is the gas that fuels this world computer. So if you want to use the computer, you've got to buy Ethereum and spend, consume it like you would gasoline in your car to, do transactions with the database.
Yeah.
So people have built really cool applications on top of this database. Games are a good example. The decentralized financial tools. So basically building what we have in the banking and investment world, but on top of this blockchain. So using your Ethereum to turn it into other tokens and then use them to, engage in loans or, whatever you have to do. Like gambling is another one, right? Having transparent algorithms to see that this, the odds are fair and we know exactly what's being done here when we put our money in. That's a great application of transparency on top of blockchain, these sorts of things. So NFTs are just another layer on top of that world computer. NFT means non-fungible token. It's a really fancy word to just say unique. Fungible means not interchangeable. So the example would be like a Picasso painting. If we both have a Picasso, yours might not be worth the same as mine. A Picasso isn't just a Picasso. Each one is individual. That's what makes it non-fungible. An example of the other way would be like money, right? A dollar bill is a dollar bill. It's fungible. We can trade dollar bills all day. I don't give a shit which one is which. So an NFT is just something that exists. Now there's a lot of blockchains, but let's say for the sake of this, on the Ethereum blockchain, that is an identifier to a specific piece of data. And really an NFT is just a wrapper to hold think of it as like a sandwich bag. And that sandwich bag is the perfect size to fit into that world computer. You can put different digital files inside of that bag, that NFT bag. So it's just a wrapper in that regard. And what's cool about it is, that certificate of that art piece in the digital world can be used as verifiable ownership of this thing. And as we build more applications like games or, an art museum, proving that you have that certificate because it's in your wallet could give you, access to the museum or the ability to get a portion of the ticket sales for the digital museum because your art is in there and we can see it, clearly on the blockchain. These sorts of different things. So I think some of the confusion with NFTs is people go, well, what's the point? It doesn't do anything at all. And I think the key answer to that is that we're very early in the construction here. So it's people hedging their bets for the future. They're saying this certificate will be useful in the future when the games are built. We're early investors. You're right. The game hasn't been built yet. So the use case isn't always obvious, but I think that's the general essence of why people value the digital ownership of a painting as much as, or sometimes even more so than like the physical representation of that painting. Yeah, again, was that layman enough? Sorry.
No, that was brilliant. So imagine again that I knew pretty much nothing about it. So, for example, if I bought a digital artwork, I could then take it into my digital home, if you like, and hang it up, and nobody could. People could copy that, but the details would always be there under the blockchain that I owned that original piece by said artist.
Yeah, I think you've got the general framework right. One way to think about it as a really simple, I love simple analogies for complex issues. It helps visualize. This is like this blockchain internet, your digital home, as you said, that's often called Web 3, this like next iteration of the internet, Web 3.0. So by that term, Web 2 is kind of the internet that we have right now. And one of the great examples is like, let's say I have a document on my computer and I want to email it to you. I don't really care if I'm actually sending you the like what feels like the physical file on my computer to your computer. What happens is the email server copies it and you get a copy of that file. And at the end of it, we both have a copy and they look exactly the same because they're clones and we're both reading at the same time. And we don't really care who has the original. All we care about is being able to exchange the information. That general premise is kind of what Web 2.0 is built upon. And all of the, kind of encrypted, like really serious stuff where we care about that is done with a really great interface on a really, really crappy pieced together backend, which is often why like banking software feels like it doesn't work very well on phones or your computer. And, you always hear people complaining about like getting, locked out of accounts and all this kind of stuff. That's because all of that is built around a very unscalable, centralized system where you just have hundreds and hundreds and thousands of support agents that are just manually fixing problems that arise from this system that's been patchworked together with Band-Aids. So Web3 is all about trying to build this next layer of the internet that is very transparent in nature and filled with these kind of gray boxes that you can look into. And that creates like a totally different foundation to build all of these tools on top of. And as you pointed out, it's all kind of being built in this, verification thing, like this, okay, this file has 500 copies. These 500 copies exist on these 5 addresses. I think that's often why I laugh when there's this whole army of people, you've probably seen them before on social media, the right-click savers. Yeah. Like when a celebrity buys an expensive NFT, they tweet about it and they go, oh my gosh, I have the same one. And they click right-click and save. Yeah. That completely misses the point, right? For like the very popular one right now, the Bored Apes Yacht Club. You've probably seen them on the news, the very distinctive kind of art style. It's not really about the art. Think of it as like a free-to-play game and the, buying cosmetics for your character. Those are just sort of bragging rights. Having the really expensive, cool golden one is a bragging right. But fundamentally, what that thing represents is a highly limited ticket to the equivalent of a yacht club. I mean, for real, it's one of the coolest groups to be a part of. And there's only 10,000 of them. So that is a very limited community. And access to that is important. And now there's more and more of this connection to the real world where if you own part of an NFT collection, you can go to an event or you're invited to a party or like we just saw a band launch an NFT collection for their fans. And if you buy one, it comes with like a free concert ticket and there's, it's sort of like the ultimate fan experience. So right-clicking and saving the picture doesn't give you that ticket to the fan experience, right? So it's really about community and what the NFT represents, and the community is being built around this shared vision of the Web3 future.
Everyone's having some relaxing music there.
Are you hearing that? Claire.
It's very nice. And a very nice ringtone. Is that an alarm or is it an actual ringtone? It sounds like it could be a nice morning wake-up call.
Well, I can't hear that.
Exactly. It was soothing.
It was very.
Uh-oh, and now we've broken the audio. He's making that face.
Claire.
Can you still hear okay, Brandur?
Can you press leave and enter again?
I think he's lost audio somehow.
Yeah, cool.
We can hear him, but yeah. Anyway.
I'll add him back in a second. We're not gonna edit this out because we like to keep it as laid back as possible.
I like it. Very authentic. That's how I like to do it, man.
Yeah, man. So I mean, yeah, the Bored Ape Yacht Club, that was a project that I was aware of straight away. Like, and I had the chance to buy into it. But unfortunately, at the time, I didn't buy in. Do you have any similar regret stories like that?
Yes and no. I have a really weird history with blockchain where I've been lurking for a really long time, and I've always been more interested in the technology aspect of it than the investment side of it. When I was a senior in university, I had a close friend who was getting into day trading, and then he got into trading Bitcoin when it was like 500 range-ish. But I didn't really buy in. And then in 2018, I actually tried to make a game on Ethereum with a couple of other esports people, and we made a little prototype, and we just felt like it was too hard and just not worth the effort, so we kind of gave up. So I put I did like an ultra deep dive and really learned a lot and made some cool contacts, and then kind of misread the market. And during that Ethereum bear market went, I don't know about this. Maybe Ethereum is just the platform for scams to be launched. You know, the ICO era was really not good. Every ICO I bought into went to zero, and I was left feeling very jaded. So
just to cut in, just for the layman, that's initial coin offering where a new cryptocurrency is launched and you have the chance to buy in at a super low price with the expectation.
Like 28.
Yeah. Just so people know that's because that is a term that I've seen bandied around now, where a lot of scams can be. ICOs can be given this once in a lifetime opportunity to buy into the next Bitcoin, and whereas that could happen, I think a lot of the ones that you see heavily advertised on Facebook using certain ads and using certain celebrities' faces, I would probably stay away from.
Yeah, it's definitely died down now, but there was a really crazy, it was like the ICO summer, I think like end of 2017, early 2018, although I might be off by a year. So yeah, I kind of didn't exit necessarily. I still had some cryptocurrency, not a huge amount, and mostly just focused on my broadcasting work and working more esports events and kind of doing that grind and traveling. And I certainly don't regret that at all. But then coming back in, the Axie Infinity guys, they actually sent me some Axies like 3 years ago, and I never logged in and used them, and I always felt guilty about it. And that's a big regret, because if I had, you know, the Axie token is worth like $90 right now, and I think the ICO was 10 cents. So the ones that do work, you know, it's great when you do get in early, and I wish I had been a little less cynical then. And it's funny because, you know, now I work for the company as the esports guy, but at the time when I talked to the co-founder, he said, you know, we might have esports one day. And I thought, I was insulted. I was like, don't get the hell out of here with this mobile game wannabe esports bullshit. Okay. We're doing real esports here. All right. This is the real shit. We got 20 years of esports history here. Don't come walking. You know, I was on my high horse, and here we are, what, 3 years later, 4 years later, and I'm championing our entire esports division, and we're looking to build like a whole league. And I mean, we have like $2 billion in our play to earn fund to use for esports prizing over the next 5 to 10 years. So pretty exciting stuff. Very much my tune has changed. So it's a good reminder to always try to be open-minded and check that ego, man, because it can definitely hold you back.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I've kind of put it down now that I can't worry if I've missed something, then I've missed it. There'll be other opportunities, and like I said, I was never into blockchain for the financial side. It was NFTs that got me into actual blockchain. Again, I left it a lot longer than I should have done to join the community. It's been about a year or so now, maybe a bit longer. But it was definitely the community aspect that got me into NFTs. Brandur, are you back in the room? Can you hear okay?
I hear you good. Yeah, whenever somebody calls me, then the sound goes. But there's a microphone on the way. I will upgrade my system. I'm sorry. But,
it's absolutely fine, mate.
It's my birthday, so I'm allowed to fuck up today.
Yeah. I haven't mentioned yet. Happy 40th birthday, Brandur.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You know, he told me it's his birthday and I totally forgot. I've been weirdly underwater in my own world, and my gosh, happy birthday, buddy. Shit, I got to come over and I got to bring some booze or something.
Yeah. No, I tend to try to ignore every birthday, especially the big ones. Usually I try to go far away from home as I can, but this year, COVID and all of that. But I'm going to Italy next week, so that'll be my treat.
Yeah,
very nice. Very good.
One thing about the NFTs, when I was looking at it initially, what I liked about the aspect of being an artist and selling art through NFTs as opposed to physical artwork was physical artwork. You sell it and it's gone. You know, you lose a connection to it. Not completely. I mean, you can find some ways of remaining connected to it. Of course, you are the creator of the object. But if it gets resold or, you know, something happens to it, you know, you're no longer involved with that. While with NFTs already on the platforms, you have this built-in feature where any resale, the artist gets a commission from it. And also potentially, if I own one of your NFTs, then I can communicate to some degree with you through the platform as an NFT holder, not just within the community, but also with the creators of the NFT. So I think that adds a certain dimension to being an artist, being part of the community that is around you.
I think that dynamic's huge, and I think that same energy goes the same way for collectors, because it's so much easier to show off an NFT collection than a physical art collection. And there is some beauty to a perfectly laid out gallery and mixing the architecture with the art and all this stuff. But that requires, if it's in your house, you have to, your house becomes a museum. In this case, I can link you my profile and show off all of my coolest NFTs just like that. And I don't know how old I guess I know how old Brandur is now, but for the younger generation, I mean, they're already used to all of their most valuable shit being in here, right? Yeah. That's not even a crazy idea to them, decentralized or not. So then when you add the layer of, if that's already how your brain is thinking, wouldn't you like to actually own those things that are in here? That's a very convincing value proposition to young people. So something else just to keep in mind, the perspective of the future, like it or not, I think it's appealing to young people.
It certainly is.
Futurists would point out that, of course, now we're gonna, in the near future, see the integration of the digital and the real, where you have a pair of glasses and they put a digital overlay over everything that you see, and once you enter my house, you log onto my Wi-Fi. Now you're integrated into my metaverse. I don't like that word anymore since they took.
Since it was stolen from us.
Yeah, it was a good word. Neil Stevenson, I think Stevenson.
Yeah, it was. It was the book. Oh, I forgot the name of the book. Yeah,
Yeah, but anyway, we'll use that until we find something better. But so you'll come into my home, and I'll have all my NFTs distributed all over my walls and decorating my pets. Or
I mean, they've already started doing that. I've been ordering just printouts. I ordered a 4x4 of my 4 most valuable Axies and specific precious ones, and just gonna hang them on my wall as colored art. And to me, it's like that art. It was $400 to get it printed or something. It's relatively large. It's all good, but in the case of this fire, right? If they burn down, I kind of like that. I don't really care about that art piece as an original. The original is digital, and being able to see it on my wall is just a reminder of what that digital artwork represents. And I feel like that's the kind of future we need to start priming ourselves for, like less connection to the material thing and more connection to what the thing represents to us. That's really it. Life is really what you make of it. And it's weird to try to recognize that with stuff that, I have one specific Axie. It's a mystic Axie. They're this class that are extra rare and they look a little different. And now they're kind of absurdly expensive, but I started an Axie that we call it a scholarship that's branded after my mystic. So like the entire brand about, empowering people and educating them and giving them the tools to better themselves and all that stuff. That's very much part of what I associate with that specific Axie. It means so much more to me than just this little egg with 6 parts and 4 little stubby legs. And sometimes I, catch myself looking at it and I feel a little self-conscious, like, man, how am I getting the dopamine hit of looking at this thing like it's an actual pet? And it's just, it's basically a blockchain Tamagotchi. Well, it's insane to me that I can feel it. I would say that sounds so stupid, except it's real to me, so I know it's real.
to my children, I have a 10-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son. To my children, that thought is not absurd. That is completely rational. I think I may have mentioned this on the episode 1 when we briefly talked about the metaverse. When COVID first kind of hit in the UK in 2020, and it was the whole country went into a lockdown, my children both instantly adapted into the metaverse, in which they were playing on Roblox on one device and they were chatting on House Party on another device, with all their friends from school, and this went on. The schools were closed for months, so this went on completely for months, where they were still able to interact with all their friends from school and all their colleagues, but they all had a digital representation of themselves, their own little person, their own little avatar, running about doing things, playing games with each other. Mostly role playing. They were using the other device where they were speaking to each other to do role plays as if they were playing in a playground at school. And the things that they collected, the things that they mined, or waiting for certain things to drop, certain new releases, the excitement they had over that, I'd never witnessed that about a digital release. Like if you look back in the background, I'm from an era of like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I remember when certain physical figures would come out, I would be so excited. Or even when like new video games, Sonic Tuesday, when Sonic 2 came out for the Mega Drive, I remember that. But my kids now are so hyped up about digital drops, and they definitely do value their digital assets. As far as for Christmas, all they wanted was currencies to buy in-game things, and maybe a new device because the device was slightly worn. But that was it. No toys, no figures, pretty much everything they want and value right now is digital. And that's what opened my eyes to the NFT scene, and the whole metaverse idea. I could completely see why it might be laughed at by older generations, but I can see the young people. That is the future. Like, there's no question about it.
Mate, they said the same thing to me when I first started getting into esports 11 years ago. Who is ever going to pay someone to watch? Like, who would ever pay to watch someone else play video games? Ever? Why? If you had given the choice, why wouldn't you just play video games? How was that fun to watch? And I mean, obviously, our generation and younger can totally see the appeal. It's the exact same psychological conundrum. What's fun about watching football? Somebody better than you doing incredible things that you can't do, and you can appreciate how hard it is. So these 5v5 games that require immense knowledge and teamwork and real-time muscle memory and decision-making, when they're able to coordinate and do these incredible combinations, you get the exact same dopamine hit. You get the exact same cheering packed arena of fans going crazy and blowing whistles and is expressing their fandom. So I think this is kind of analogous to that, where it is always harder for the older generations to see from the lens of the younger. Yeah. And I'm 32, so I'm wary of getting to that point myself. I hope I don't fall out of touch, but it's scary how quickly it happens.
Well, I'm 41, and I still say I refuse to be one of these skeptics, even if an idea sounds out there. Do you know what I mean? If people are into it, if people dig it, then that's what it is. But you've made a great point there about the esports. As you can see from the hat I'm wearing, it's football. You Americans incorrectly call it soccer. It's football. But what I will say is, because of COVID, the last 2 games featuring my team have been cancelled because of COVID. The players can't interact with each other due to the pandemic. But esports, if you had a team or if you had a certain player, it's not gonna hinder that, is it? It's not gonna hinder
not too much. Yeah. It does add some kinks, and there's a huge part of esports that involves physical, like LAN events, where you bring 30 people on site and they're all playing together in one place. So those are still hard to do. Not impossible. You have to bubble and be pretty stringent about testing and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, you're totally right. At a high level, video games have a high capacity to be done by virtual memes, or put everybody in their own room and they can still do a tournament or still compete. In America, they comically kind of did that with NASCAR at the very beginning of lockdowns, because now they have the really sophisticated race simulators. So they just put the drivers in race simulators and had them race digitally. And it was a fun experiment. It definitely not one-to-one, especially when it comes to cars, because you're tempted to take more risk. And, if you crash your car in the digital world, it's kind of like playing poker for play money. Just, even if it's only a $10 buy-in, you play differently when there's something on the line versus nothing. So it was an interesting experiment, though, to see, it is representative of some racing skills, but it also is not one-to-one of the real thing. So Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to do with that data, but I did find it very interesting. And of course, we did see some dark moments of some of the racers raging at each other and using inappropriate words live on stream. Also comical to see some true colors revealed as a byproduct of COVID. Yeah, again, with the silver linings.
I heard an interesting theory recently about the escape to the digital in relation to why we don't see any aliens out there. It's just the natural, development of technology and intelligence. Is that one point you create simulation of reality that becomes much more alluring and attractive than actually going out there.
Yeah, I think of that Disney movie WALL-E, when they get to the end of the movie and all the humans are sitting in their floating chairs staring at screens, and their bodies have evolved so that they don't really have toes anymore, and they're all super round. They all look like pears and stuff. Yeah, I there is definitely something to that, and we see that cycle in society where once you get developed and comfortable, then it's easier to stop innovating, and it's easier for like that IQ to kind of hold steady or start to shrink as a society. And then the folks that are, up and comers have this stronger incentive to adopt new technologies and learn very rapidly. And, the scales start to shift. But yeah, I mean, I've been in this full time for 8 months, and esports was a very all-in kind of lifestyle, always on thing also. But I'm finding that there's this weird feedback loop where the deeper I go into the metaverse and blockchain and my career, the harder it is for me to get on well with regular folks that don't care about blockchain. And even if we disagree on the nuances of it, like people in this Web3 world, I feel like it's a mindset of seeing the world and problems and solutions and being engaged in part of that problem solving. And, if you appreciate this technology, it kind of changes the way you start to see the big gaps in the world. And, I can get on with regular folks, but even like my family, it's sort of talking about the weather feels like a chore now. It feels like the opportunity cost of my attention should be spent on solving big problems and, how can we help the people that actually need it? And how can we build these scalable solutions? And it's creating a disconnect for me. I feel like I'm losing more and more touch with my physical community. And that leads me to conclude that I need to build some sort. It's like I have this pixelated vision for like a hippie techie commune that's like the intersection of shared ownership with this like verifiable digital ownership, where you have a local community and there's a priority on food and education and all these basic resources, but most of what you care about is in the digital world. But it's making a conscious effort to be part of this physical community, because we know just the digital world doesn't replace the physical part. Even if it comes close, there's still some spiritual juice that you get from hugging another person, or like that's why I think people go to church, man. I'm not religious, but I understand why people like that routine of the community every Sunday and going and seeing the same people and having that support system. It doesn't really matter if the stuff you're rallying around doesn't really resonate with you if you get value out of that community. For the first time in my life, I'm like jealous of religious people that have this kind of strong community, because I think like I've said this recently, every 14-day cycle, 13 out of the 14, I feel like my life is a 9.5 out of 10. I feel a huge sense of purpose. I feel very happy with what I'm doing, and I can see the progression in what we're building, and that's amazingly satisfying. But that 1 out of 14, I feel completely suffocated by loneliness. And I look around, and when I give myself space to think about it, I go, I don't really have any real life friends anymore. They all live in different places. I don't know any of my neighbors. Every single social mixer at my apartment complex I've missed because I was on the road. Wow. And it really sinks in. It's like, I haven't been on a date in insert embarrassing amount of time here, those sort of moments. So it's a really weird duality to go 13 out of 14 ain't bad. Overall, I'm super privileged and super lucky, but it's insane to notice that the extremity is increasing, where like the highs are much higher, but that 1 out of 14 low is also getting a little bit lower. I'm embarrassed to say that there are tears going to sleep at least once a month at a recurring rate at this point. So I don't know what to do with that, man. So sorry, again, very deep here, but I think
this is what
I think
we
you're
like.
totally right. Yeah,
what we like. last episode I ended up in tears talking about something. So no, we definitely want to be. We don't want to paint out that you've got this amazing project that you work for and everything sunshine and roses. You know what I mean. You need to be honest. But do you think maybe that is not just because of the kind of work you do, but because you're a workaholic that maybe
That's
there's that
probably
angle as
part of
well?
it. You're absolutely right. And there's no doubt that's something I've, struggled with a little bit. I feel I have more balance now than ever before, but I think there's still more to go there. I'm a work in progress for sure. But yeah, I have this weird being bored is my worst state of mind. So not that I want to be so busy that I burn out, but there's a happy balance of like, that sense of purpose is what really drives me. And I love having things that I can dive into and really go deep on. And that's like why I wrote a book. I had all this stuff in my head. It was like, I need to channel this into something. And that was a really cool long-term project. So, but whenever you have those moments of like darkness or like, what's it all for, man? You're like, well, I don't know, but I know what this is for right now. And I can really focus on that. And it's not fulfilling if it's just a lame distraction, but if you're actually working on something that you feel like is powerful or has a message worth sharing, or, if it helps just one person, right, then it feels worth it. So,
Yeah.
I'm curious what our listeners are going to say about that. If they're going through also like this increased sense of need for meaning, because I'm really relating to what you're saying. The more and more, like I can't watch TV without doing something else at the same time, like jotting down ideas or answering emails or whatever it is. It needs to feed into my sense of purpose. And if I'm feeding that, then generally I feel pretty good about even if when I feel bad, it's still in the state of depression. I'm doing something useful. It has
exactly.
me.
I feel very similar with that, but now I'm noticing that alone isn't enough. I think having some real physical community is still pretty important. Maybe that's like, I've always loved this saying that humans right now wear old hardware with new software. And sometimes that leads to really weird conclusions where we're wired against things that we know. It's like, I don't know. I think there's something just hardwired in us to like get a specific, dopamine hit or whatever from other human to human interaction. Like I noticed that with COVID lockdown. I didn't leave my house for a pretty long time besides to buy groceries. And like a year and a half in or whatever, I finally went on a date, and it's like hugging another person was like this euphoric, like, wow, I never thought of this as a drug, but having not had this for a year and a half, I'm like, whoa, and that's like a really eye-opening experience as a human to have.
Yeah. So we're kind of started talking about like we've got more into your personal side, Andrew. Let's dig a bit deeper. We know what you do, but let's talk more about you. So where did it all start from you? Where did you grow up? Let's get into that.
I'm from New Jersey, South Jersey, so close to Philadelphia, East Coast, United States. That was where it all started for me. My parents are both veterinarians. They met in veterinary school. So I had kind of a unique upbringing. My dad worked in public health, and my mom was a regular, like, small animal veterinarian you would take your dog or cat to. So I was watching her, rip testicles off cats and do spays and neuters and stuff since I was a wee lad. For most people, they get to dissect their first animal in biology class when they were like 15 or 16 in high school. I think I dissected my first cat fetus when I was probably 6 or 7. So definitely had just sort of a unique lens on the world in terms of being around that environment. Really grew up passionate about animals, and then I don't know how to say it. I'm a little burned out. When I moved out of my house after university, it was my mom, myself, and my stepdad living there, 3 people, and I think 13 dogs, a little much. That's a bit much for me. So anyway, I played football a bit, your football, soccer for me. I usually call it North American football for anyone that isn't from America, just for your sake. But I played soccer for a number of years as a kid, and then I got into actually competitive horseback riding for a lot of years. And my family bought a horse farm for a good stretch right before my parents got divorced, and then I got into computers and pot and expanding my brain, and things started to get really interesting. And then after that, I got a bachelor's degree in entrepreneurship, actually. So very, very interesting track to get from point A to point B.
Cool, man. So,
what's your favorite book?
My favorite book. Ooh, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I would have said The Millionaire Next Door. It's a data-driven book about how the richest people are the ones that are like, you know, the blue-collar guy, like your neighbor that's the plumber who has really low overhead and is really diligent about saving, compared to the people that you presume to be rich that have the big mansion and the nice car. Those are usually the poorest people because they're super overextended and have spent all their money on luxuries. And it's a super data-driven approach. And I just found that book fascinating, and kind of, I read it in high school and found it kind of life-changing in terms of thinking about the time value of money and like setting those seeds and stuff. What is my favorite book now? I'm spacing. I did read something decent not that long ago, and it was so memorable, I've forgotten which book it was. I'm not a huge reader. I read mostly nonfiction, so it's mostly boring business type stuff. Like From Good to Great was another really good. Oh, you know, my favorite book, Delivering Happiness. The Zappos CEO, Tony Hsieh, he passed away 2 years ago, I think, way too young. But if you don't know the story of Zappos, it's super fascinating. They really redefined what it means to create a culture around business. Zappos was the website that sold shoes, and they were famously one of the first e-commerce sites where you could order shoes and then try them on and return them for free without paying shipping until you get the sizing right, which was, you know, insane back in the day. You know, now with Amazon Prime, we're just used to free shipping, but way back when, that was really cool. And the story ends with Zappos ended up being bought out by Amazon. So it's like a real, not quite a rags to riches story, but they almost go bust several times. And he's like a true innovator, one of those folks that just moved a little too fast. And I think that was part of his passing. But it really, really good book, Delivering Happiness. It's cool. Written in the first person and very easy to read.
Excellent. And I noticed on your socials as well, again, stick no more personal. If it's too personal at any point, just tell me to fuck off and mind
fire away, man. No worries.
But, you're very openly that you're a cross-dresser. When did that start? How did that start? Can you, for people who obviously I don't know anything about it, can you explain a bit more there about how that came into your life?
Yeah, totally. It's been about 1.5 years now, so relatively recent still. I guess I always identified as bisexual, whatever that means, when I was younger. And I think I was, without, you don't have the vocabulary, especially, in the early 2000s and stuff. It wasn't nearly as open as it is now. So navigating it was a little bit harder. I always felt definitely some sense of femininity that my other male friends didn't seem to have nearly as strongly as I did. Looking back, I think I'm less bisexual and more just like, I don't know. I guess you could say I feel trapped in the wrong body, but I don't really have gender dysphoria. And I just feel kind of like, whatever, man. I just do whatever makes you comfortable if it doesn't hurt other people. And like, I have no desire to transition or take hormones or any of that stuff. Yeah. It just seems horribly inconvenient for something I feel kind of neutral about. But there just kind of came this point where I was thinking about it a lot, and like, man, I kind of feel like I want to start wearing dresses. It's just like a feeling. And once you let yourself explore that, you kind of see where it goes. And then after I had ordered, it was just a simple dress from Amazon. I saw this hashtag one day on Twitter. It was like National Coming Out Day. And normally I find that stuff pretty cheesy and just, undesirable. But there was just enough kind of positivity around it and people sharing stories that were being received well. It just seemed kind of wholesome. And it was a moment that felt a little cosmic for me. Like, man, what a coincidence. This thing just popped into my feed, like in the same week that I ordered this dress. Like this is, the universe is telling me something. So I just went for it, and I took a picture and posted it. And then it's, as an influencer, and at the time I was a Dota commentator, the internet reacts as the internet's going to react. And it was like kind of a wow type thing. And I ended up writing that blog that's still pinned on my Twitter that kind of breaks down the perspective and kind of the detailed story of me going from point A to point B on that journey. So, and then ever since then, I've just been embracing it and collecting designer dresses and expanding my wardrobe and figuring out how to accessorize, and that's about it. I guess what maybe makes my perspective a little more unique than the average, and I've got a small anecdote from Iceland maybe I can share for some context, but I feel very neutral about all of it. Like, I don't really have a preferred pronoun or whatever. You can call me.
That's what I was going to go on to that. Yeah, next, if you had a certain
pronoun. I don't really care. I mean, I understand that it's important to other people, and that's totally fine. But my ideal world is just like, we're all people, and it's all neutral, and you judge me based on my ethics and how I conduct myself and the things that I say. I don't want to be a hero for wearing a dress. I don't want to be a villain for wearing a dress. I just want to be a dude wearing a dress. When I was for Christmas, we were up in North Iceland in Akureyri. Yeah. And the Northerners were pretty interesting. They oh, sorry, it's getting dark here. All right, I'm backlit now, but we went to, there was a birthday, and then they had sort of this follow-up party, and there were like 8 or 10 people there, and they were definitely intrigued to meet me and my British friend who's also with us, as some foreigners hanging out in the North for Christmas. And I made a self-deprecating joke about gender or something, and one of them laughed and said, you know, I thought you were just wearing that for attention, but now that you've explained you'd be wearing that regardless of what we think, that makes me really like you. That's so cool. But they kind of prejudged it as like, this must be like a gimmick or a clout or like, you know, some sort of a bait or something. Like, people kind of assume that I might be hypersensitive or that they walk on eggshells. And once they realize that I don't really care, it's all good. I get it. You know, it creates a totally different dynamic. So,
with having a big online presence, did you catch any shit from pricks, from any dickheads?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I mean, I have an international audience too. So, you know, a lot of parts of the world are still catching up in terms of being progressive with LGBTQ rights and women's rights and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, absolutely. But there's also a lot of support out there. And especially now with this new game and having kind of a senior role, I get a lot of messages from people that are, you know, really, really moved by it in terms of they feel repressed, and it gives them some confidence to kind of be who they are and see that it's okay and that other people are willing to be in the limelight. I really didn't understand how much representation matters until it was kind of made apparent to me just from people reaching out and talking about it and sharing really, you know, some dark, some positive, and some in between kind of emotional stories. Seeing part of yourself in someone else who is presumed to be successful or out there or, you know, on TV or whatever, it really motivates people. It makes them feel more than instead of less than, and it makes them feel like anything is possible. And that's like really, really powerful stuff that I just wasn't tuned into until people forced me to.
Yeah.
I felt that a lot when I became disabled, you know, seeing other people with similar limitations doing something other than just lying in bed waiting to die. That was very helpful.
Yeah, definitely. How did you deal, Andrew, with the negativity? Did you ignore it? Did you answer it? Because you seem like a very thick-skinned person and you're very articulate. So I'm sure, no doubt, that people firing criticism had nowhere near your intellect anyway, because generally people with a high intellect don't tend to throw shit at you.
Yeah. It's a muscle for sure. And like, you know, I was born on Twitch. So like my whole career has been public facing, right? I've been a broadcasting commentator for a better part of a decade, and people are just looking for any excuse to rake you over the coals anytime you make any mistake. You know, you miscall a name or an ability, and he doesn't know anything. This guy's a total idiot. How did he get this job? And people are super hateful. And for whatever reason, anonymity does tend to bring out the worst in a certain small, loud, angry, upset part of humanity. And they take every opportunity to just, you know, poke wherever they can. And whenever they find a spot that hurts, they twist as much as they can. So it is hard. And this is like sort of a weird thing that I always struggle to say, because I don't want to make it, you never want to victim blame and be like, well, just block it out, you know, because words can really hurt and people can really cut. But there is another side of it where I've definitely learned that you can build up a bit of a muscle and an insulation. And if you can kind of build up your own self-image from a place of confidence and from a place of value, you can start to have this real insulation from these kinds of things where, you know, if I'm on the street and some stranger walks up to me and uses a slur or calls me the F word or something, my immediate reaction is that says so much more about you than it does about me, because you just came up to a stranger on the street and provoked them with an insult. I immediately think damaged human. Whoa, how do we disarm this? Not, oh my gosh, I'm so offended. Honestly, it doesn't really matter what that guy thinks about me, right? It doesn't change how I see myself, because I know what I've done. I know I'm a good person. I know my moral compass, right? I know my ethics and I know the impact I've had on the world. So this guy who knows nothing about me, the fuck do I care?
Does that still happen? Is that still a? I'm showing my ignorance here by being like a big white man kind of thing. Just I don't really get much shit on the street, and never have. So does that kind of thing still happen?
Not that, I mean, I don't, for it has, it doesn't happen that regularly, but
not a nice,
you know, I live near Boulder, Colorado, where it's super progressive and celebrated. So, you know, I generally not, but it has absolutely happened before. Yeah. And I, you know, yeah. And maybe I do spend a lot of time in groups and stuff. So maybe that dissuades people versus if I were to, you know, be wandering around alone a lot more frequently, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, some people are obnoxiously aggressive for whatever reason and have this really strange lens of wanting to provoke people. I did have a moment in Miami just about a month ago where I was walking into the men's room and someone was walking out and said, "This is the men's room." And I said, "I know." And he kind of shook his head like, and I don't know. I feel very safe in airports because, you know, no one's got a weapon and, you know, if they do anything, you've got security nearby. So I often feel, I very seldom feel unsafe, but I do have moments where people make their political agenda quite clear. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Fuck them.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I guess I always want to try to encourage people to think about that thick skin, so to speak. I wish we could change that moniker because it's really like a thick muscle. It's something that you have to work it out, and like it takes time. You know, not to plug too much, but the main like chapter of my book about the whole, like when I exposed myself on webcam by accident, that chapter is posted on my website. So you can just go to zyori.tv and you can read it and kind of read about that whole emotional experience. And it resulted in a really extreme cyberbullying. I mean, every single public facing portal I had of people blowing it up and making fun of me. And, you know, it was sent to like my parents and my grandparents and my place of work outside of esports. And like it might have just been one person, but there was somebody out there that really took that opportunity to be like, "Hey, this guy's down. Let's kick him as many times as we can." And that was like a dark depression. That was really hard to go. All my esports contracts got canceled. I thought my career was over. I kind of had to restart from zero. So like going through that in the moment, it's like, I don't want anybody to ever have to go through something like this. I totally see how that kind of internet brigading, when it feels like the whole world is focused on you and making fun of you and your information is being spread like wildfire. When you go on 4chan and there's a picture of your grandmother's Facebook page saying, "Here's his grandmother, everybody blow it up." That shit's fucking scary, man. And it really makes you feel less than, and it makes you feel powerless. And I was never suicidal, but I totally could see how that could drive someone to suicide. And I felt lucky that I had 2 years of skin in the game building up that muscle before that point. And I felt like if I hadn't started working out that muscle a little bit, it totally could have pushed me over the edge. And I was lucky to have supportive family and friends in real life that were there to help me get through it. If I didn't have that, who knows how much deeper and darker it could have been. So I don't want to downplay at all this, like, just work out your muscle and, you know, it's on you to block out negative thoughts. Absolutely not. but I do want to try to give people maybe some motivation and hope that there is a way to take baby steps towards like getting to that mindset where you can see attackers as really damaged people, and it just doesn't affect you the same way. You know, it's developing that skill set to meaningfully block that out and just be able to walk away and say, I know who I am. I know I'm a good person. Fuck you.
Yeah, man. Excellent. Well, I'm glad you come through that. I'm glad. I mean, it's shit that it had to happen. People trying to sabotage you. That's just, again, it's just that envy and jealousy, really, isn't it? That seems to drive that. But yeah,
I don't know.
The ability for people to hide behind the avatar on a screen on Twitter is also a bonus for them, that they don't have to show who they are, and they feel they can get away with saying any shit.
I think it comes from a sense of inferiority sometimes. It's like the only way that they can have an impact on the world around them is by, doing these things. And then they do them once and they see how much power, how much influence it brings them. It just... And then
you're definitely right.
Be...
Yeah, it is. There's a power dynamic there for sure. And that's why one of the most effective ways to stop that when it's happening to you is to just not respond. The more you respond, the more it feeds it, and the more it reaffirms to them that what they're doing is working. And that's exactly what I think Brandur's getting at here, is that makes them feel powerful. If any of you have seen Cobra Kai, the Phoenix, the Mohawk kid, I think sadly that is a very real representation of what some of these people look like, where if you feel the less than your entire life, this is a moment where you can have some power and feel greater than, even if it's just for a few moments. If you've ever seen that show Catfish, why do people do that? Why do people pretend to be someone else and string someone else along for years and fake this relationship? It's just a power flex. It just makes them feel powerful and important. And it's a shame that people are in a place to feel like they have to do that to, fulfill themselves. That's, I think, says something about current society, right? That people feel the need to do that at like the most basic level.
So moving back into the try to tie this back into what you're doing with Axie, because obviously it's a community project. Have you had any trouble with that, bullying or what have you, going on in the Axie world? And if so, what measures do you put in place to kind of stop that?
Yeah. A little, so kind of not like social bullying in the same way that we think of in the regular world, but it is still influencers and popularity contests, and the internet is still the internet when people are anonymous. The tools that we're building, right, they can be used for good and bad. This ability to, like, there's this whole system now of Axie scholarships, where if you're from a developing country, you don't have enough money to buy a set of Axies, you can join a guild, they'll give you a set, and then you can play with them, and then you split the earnings. And they call themselves scholars. This is really powerful stuff. Like, this allows people for the first, again, goes back to the trustless thing. I can have a scholar on the other side of the world in the Philippines, give them access to my Axies, and I have no threat of them being stolen or anything, because it's secured by the blockchain. And it allows me to create this relationship where they can earn you with an asset they wouldn't be able to afford otherwise. So it's just a straight value add, like value creation for people that have access to the game through a smartphone or through a computer, but might not have access to many other resources. And of course, the nature of the global economy, like the US dollar goes really far in places like the Philippines or Venezuela or Indonesia, where the currency exchange is really high. So even $10 a day USD in the Philippines is like, whoa, oh my gosh, this is a huge boost to my income. So those tools, right, we're working on making sure people leverage them for good. And most of the scholarships are built in a percentage of production model. Like, whatever you grind as a scholar, you get to keep 70%. So the idea is, like, even though the market might fluctuate or whatever else, it's like you get 70% of what's produced. And it's kind of on you to decide how much you want to produce on any given day. very different from like this classic capitalistic system where it's like minimum wage +1, where, you know, the managers, the Axies, they're worth however much. And it's like, what's the least amount I can pay you? And then because you have all the leverage as the asset owner, you keep all the profit in the middle. We're trying to, you know, build the future in terms of economic models with these systems. But there are absolutely regressive bad actor entities out there that are trying to use this technology to, you know, force people to play the game, to grind money and all this kind of stuff. So it's tricky, right? This is definitely, it reminds me of the internet when it was created. It was used for a lot of really cool innovation, and it was used for a shitload of scams. A lot of people lost a lot of money at the beginning of the internet because we didn't have Google or check marks or these verifiable tools, and people were really naive and we're just diving in without doing any research. And we're seeing history repeat itself. There are definitely people doing the same thing here. So it's a big question. There's a lot of different angles and a lot of different tools that we're building to try to mitigate some of this stuff. The nature of smart contracts and these kind of trustless relationships give us more tools, but you know, it's certainly not perfect. And it's also hard because one of the ethos of cryptocurrency and blockchain is some degree of anonymity, right? This idea of being able to interact without KYC or know your customer, like identity verification. So per everything else, there's benefits and drawbacks. So yeah, maybe not bullying, but definitely, you know, where there are humans, there will be bad actors, and where there are bad actors, there will be abuse. So we're trying as hard as we can to sniff them out and get them the hell out of here. But, you know, it's every system struggles with that, I think, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think it's been amazing to watch Axie grow and develop it. And one thing I was going to mention before, but you guys are so quick. There was, you know, when Axie migrated off the Ether chain, how much impact it had on gas fees. It showed that you know, the activity on the ETH chain that had already grown pretty big, how much percentage just the Axie transactions were of that.
Yeah.
Well, it's also like, you know, the responsibility of you guys as a leader and you as the face of Axie. I mean, I think that's a pretty purposeful role to have.
Yeah, I feel lucky to have found it when I did, and you know, kind of stumbled into it. And it's funny because the crypto game that I tried to make in 2018, I had always regarded as a big failure, and most of my esports friends and colleagues really made fun of me a lot for that. Like, oh, this is, you know, another grift, and you know, you're just looking for a quick paycheck, and you know, if you really want to make it, you got to buckle down and focus. And the irony of that now, knowing that trying to make that game led me to have the contact with the COO of the company. And he was the one that I first talked to about the position that I started earlier this year. So it was all created through, you know, going out there and trying to make this game and failing at doing it, but it still caught his attention of, well, the fact that we're even thinking about a game like this with this technology, you're super ahead of the curve. And it's, you know, perspective is a hell of a thing, man. You know, one man's failure is another man's success. Or I guess sometimes your own failures can be spun into a success, which is always a peculiar feeling, I guess.
I think that's the thing also, you know, you have 10 guys who set out to start some kind of company and an emerging technology, and 9 of them are going to fail. One of them succeeds. The one who succeeds is going to hire, you know, the other guy. So at least, you know, they have some experience and insights, and they know, you know, some of the pitfalls, which the successful guy, maybe he just got lucky, you know, maybe those pitfalls are just a little further down the road for him. But I like, one thing I really like about Axie is how far ahead they seem to have, you know, planned everything. Can you tell us a little bit about future events?
Yeah, so this year for Axie was all about the back end. You mentioned like we have our own blockchain. It was about building out the rest of the tools we need there, like our exchange and being able to swap tokens around in the ecosystem. Various things on the back end that just allow us to scale the blockchain, releasing our Ronin token that will be the gas for our blockchain, just like Ethereum or ETH is the gas for Ethereum. So this year was a little bit boring. We didn't really release much in the way of gameplay updates, but we have built the infrastructure now to really scale this thing into the future. What's crazy about Axie is that we never expected to have this many players at this point in the trajectory. You know, we've got a pretty long and steady roadmap that's very focused on building infrastructure. And we were hoping to have maybe, you know, 200,000, 250,000 daily active users by the end of 2021. We ended with like 2.5 million. So 10x of our most extreme projection. That's wild. And honestly, it caused us some issues. There was a point in July and August where the servers were offline for a few weeks because they were just getting DDoSed from natural demand of people wanting to play the game, because we just never expected that level of demand. So we've been working on a lot of really cool expansions. What we call Axie Origin will be like the next upgraded version of the battle system. Think of like the battle system now as the alpha. We've got the beta coming out with, you know, more stuff and kind of expanded gameplay. And then we have Axie Land, which has also been under construction for about 3 years, 2.5 years now. And that's finally nearing completion and will hopefully launch like Q3 or Q4 of this year. So we have 2 really, really big product offerings coming that will expand the gameplay, expand the graphics, and just really make everything a lot more robust and interesting, and also set us up for a really exciting esports future that hasn't really come online yet. You know, we're still in the kind of testing, like preseason phase of esports. So a pretty exciting year ahead. You know, nobody cares about infrastructure, even though it is really important. And everyone's super excited about gameplay as expected. So it's going to be fun to deliver products that like our fans are super excited about this year.
Exciting.
Excellent. So would you class Axie the landscape behind it as a metaverse? Because you seem to come up. Axie seems to come up when you search metaverse. Apart from now that it's been hijacked by a certain person, but Axie is right up there. Obviously, there's Axie Sandbox, Decentraland. Would you consider yourself like a metaverse?
It's an interesting question, and I think there's like a lot of argument and discussion around terminology. I think, as you guys have pointed out, everybody who's actually into building on blockchain is now immediately not into metaverse because of it getting hijacked. So yes and no. I think, to me, what metaverse is supposed to mean is interoperability of like the internet. The internet is the metaverse. So the metaverse is the interconnection of all these different things. You know, like it's not like Decentraland is its own metaverse and Axie is its own metaverse. I would say these are all like universes that are all connected to the same metaverse. There's just one metaverse. Anybody who tries to claim ownership of their own metaverse, or like, I think that's just marketing, branding, kind of red flag type territory. Most of the builders that I've talked to, it's like that vision is about it all being connected and sort of working together. You know, you have your Axies in like that kind of Axie universe, but because they're on blockchain, we could do a collaboration with Decentraland, and then you can have your Axies follow you around in Decentraland. Just a random example, right? But I think that's what I picture anytime I use the word metaverse. That's generally what I mean. This really high level, you know, think about, like, we just watched Contact the other day, that opening where it kind of takes you through the, you know, like planet to solar system to galaxy to universe to super universe to like all these, like, or was it galaxies, then super galaxies, then universes, then super universes, all these clusters of clusters of clusters. That's, you know, that I think it's kind of analogous to what the metaverse will be. We'll have all these individual IPs and universes, but as more stuff gets built and more things work together, there's more social pressure for the most popular things to work with other popular things. Does that make sense? Like, I think there's like an acceleration kind of feedback loop there that we haven't really seen ignited yet, but my thesis is that it will.
I admit I had it the other way. I thought of it like multiple unconnected metaverses, but I like your way of seeing it. It's kind of similar to you know, the Ready Player One interpretation of the universe, digital universe, where everything, you have Star Trek and Star Wars just, you know, side by side versus in the same kind of interactive sphere.
Yeah.
But in the book Snow Crash, where he presented this idea, there was more like a layered realities where you would jump between these different verses. And I'm not sure if he used the metaverse in the context that we're talking about it now, or whether it was like these multiple different metaverses.
I mean, yeah, it's hard to say how it's going to pan out, right? Some of it'll come down to marketing, and some of it will come down to building and who's able to really crack the code. I mean, one of the marvels of Axie is that it's the first one that has really onboarded new users into blockchain. And that's where even folks that are into Ethereum that don't really care about games recognize that, like, well, this is the rest of the ecosystem benefits. Like, you know, your Axie's at the head of the ship, but by Axie growing, the ship is also growing. So we all benefit from just people adopting Web3.
People start in Axie and maybe some of them migrate to other places.
Yeah. Exactly. That's kind of the dream, right? I mean, we want that. We want people to be immersed in the whole ecosystem. And, you know, there's a lot of other really great projects out there, you know, games and otherwise, for, you know, people should be taking advantage of, you know, all these decentralized finance tools that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, there's one way I like to see the blockchain, as in you're creating like trust, of course, you know, trustless word always confuses me, but so you're adding trust to all kinds of different elements, and you're creating these value connections. Like an analogy that I found useful was in the beginning, like in Scotland, they developed a lot of the initial economic theories that we use today. Land was basically valueless until somebody was able to calculate how many sheep you could pasture on each area of land. And now you had a very nice way of kind of asserting value to every land. And now, after that, you know, ownership over every inch of grassland was in somebody's hand. Now, with the blockchain, we're adding on the potential of creating links to, you know, digital artworks and all kinds of different things. So I think this coinciding with the metaverse jump is really going to mean that we're going to have new universe essentially.
Yeah. And one of the things that, you know, might bake your noodle a little bit and certainly deters a lot of folks is we're still in this world of, like, value is arbitrary, right? Value is based on how humans perceive things, and in groups, how much we value things that are relatively scarce. So let's talk about Bored Apes as an example, right? That's an NFT collection that is on Ethereum, like the biggest blockchain where you can do such a thing. But now we're seeing more and more of these other blockchains like Solana or Polygon or Harmony and all these different things. And they have the same exact technology, sometimes even better in terms of efficiency or the amount of transactions they can handle or whatever else. And there's nothing stopping anyone from just copying the Bored Apes collection and just uploading it to Solana and selling it as an NFT collection and saying, hey, this is Solana Bored Apes. They're exactly the same. But when you look at the reality of the market, I'm almost positive someone has tried to do that. Why doesn't it go anywhere? Why doesn't anybody buy them? Because nobody values them. Anybody that values an ape values the official one on the official blockchain, and all the copycats are just copycats. It's an interesting conundrum, and some of it has to do with, like, the club thing that we talked about before in the communities and stuff. But it is really interesting when you talk about the metaverse and how things can just expand when anybody can copy anything and just keep growing it out because it's all transparent. How many blockchains do we need? I don't know. That's kind of $1 billion question, right? I've been on panels where people argue about this kind of thing. Like, are all NFTs created equal? Is an NFT on Ethereum just as valuable to you as an NFT on Solana? I think most people would say no. There is a very stark difference, but when you really try to dive in and try to explain it or articulate it or quantify it, it basically just comes down to human perception. It comes down to Ethereum is more official than the others, and it's safer than the others, and this is the foundation of it all. that first mover advantage, right? It's all very interesting to me, and how it all pans out will be fascinating.
Wasn't the first NFT on Bitcoin?
I don't think so. I mean, I might be wrong, but I think the cyberpunks were the original NFTs, basically.
I thought there was some very clever programmer who had figured out a way to kind of make something similar to NFTs and attach it to the Bitcoin chain. But I might be wrong. I might be misremembering.
I'm not sure. I think with Bitcoin, that's not super popular. There might be some technical thing, like, you know, they put some text somewhere or something. But I said cyberpunks. It's CryptoPunks. I don't know how I slipped that, but you've probably seen them. They're the really weird collection of, like, you know, little 8-bit art faces, and they sell for really stupid amounts of money. And the reason they sell for those crazy amounts is because they are like the original NFT collection. That was the first one to do the 10,000 unique character thing. And they're super, super old and iconic from like a blockchain history perspective. And you always have to remember, when you look at those numbers of like, why did somebody pay, you know, $5 million for this stupid JPEG? These are people that probably bought Ethereum when it was $5 or, you know, $20 or something. So if you're 1,000x on your Ethereum investment, it's not real money to you the same way of somebody who's, you know, grinding money at like a blue collar job, so to speak, you know. So it's just a totally different perspective that's hard to contextualize. Because, like, think about the crypto market is worth $2 trillion. That's money that just came out of nowhere. But that's our generation's fuck you to the system that we were inherited. That's just $2 trillion of let's call it arbitrary value that's been printed through cryptocurrency. And because it can mostly be exchanged for other cryptocurrency and you can cash it out on exchanges, it's real money now. That's $2 trillion of money that didn't exist, that we created. That's wild to think about.
Well, the current economy is based mostly on debt. And that means essentially that money is the promise of future work. So
I love that. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin and blockchain and all these cryptos, they're the same. I mean, there's a huge community that just believes that this is going to have value in the future and that there will be entertainment and utility and practical applications and all these different things that are going to be part of it. So now we have...
You want the real kicker? You know what really made Bitcoin's trajectory where it's at now possible? It's Silk Road. It was the dark web, right? At the very beginning, Bitcoin was worth nothing because there was no way to cash it out, right? That was the original, what was it, 10,000 Bitcoins for a pizza? At the time, that was a great deal because there was no point to them. It was just fake internet money. And then once Silk Road, the famous exchange that was taken down where you could buy drugs and sex and whatever else, all the naughty things that are illegal, Bitcoin was the currency. And all of a sudden that became a use case for one of the most basic human drives in our history. Every culture has had some form of intoxication, be it for religious or ceremonial reasons or just for recreation. That's a huge part of the human condition, coping with our reality through intoxicants. And it's sort of ironic that one of the most basic of human behaviors, despite being illegal, was what gave this thing a use case and slowly let it come into prevalence and be spread around to become actual money, tender that has value. And I find that, again, I don't know exactly what to do with that data point, but I find it fascinating. It seems so perfectly human.
I know a friend who used to buy his weed off Silk Road, and he stopped working it out a few years ago. At his last calculation, he spent £800,000, which is like a lot more than dollars, on about maybe 2 ounces of weed. That was the way he looked at it now, because of how much Bitcoin was worth then and how much it's worth now. And that this was a couple of years ago. He doesn't want to think about it anymore. The same with the guys who spent 10,000 on a pizza. It's just
Douglas Adams had a joke in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy where basically the colonizers of Earth initially they decided to use leaves as their local currency. Of course, that caused a lot of inflation. So in order to solve for that problem, they burned down all the forests.
A true burning mechanism. Wow, look at that.
Yeah. He was a prophet.
Yeah, the guy that bought the pizza, though, apparently he's spoken up, and I think he's doing just fine. You know, if he had 10,000 Bitcoins to spend on a pizza, you probably stand to reason he had a lot more Bitcoins, you know, just hanging around when you're that early.
Yeah.
But yeah, totally. I have a friend who's transgender and was buying hormones from Silk Road and had a similar, like, man, if I just kept one of those, I spent so many Bitcoins, you know, it's, yeah, a lot of people have that.
I heard the story of the pizza guy not long ago on YouTube, and basically he was very early on, and this was before you could exchange Bitcoin for anything. So what he had done is he'd sent out a lot of emails and basically just said, "Will anybody accept this amount of Bitcoins for a pizza?" And then it had been, I forget if it was days or weeks before anybody finally just said, you know, fuck it, yeah, all right, I'll take it. So
Yeah.
It was a really different paradigm when he did it, and yes, he is doing very well. So I don't think he regrets it. And you know, today we have, you know, internationally we have Pizza Day. I forget when it was. I think it's in the
I
summer.
can't remember either. It always pops up on Twitter, and I go, "Oh yeah, it's Bitcoin Pizza Day. Yeah, that's nice." But yeah,
Just I googled it just because I mentioned it. But the first NFT, according to Wikipedia, was is called Quantum, and it was registered on the Namecoin, which was a copy of Bitcoin. Or like
huh. Well, today I learned. That's yeah. I actually did not know that.
Me neither.
I always thought it was the punks.
Yeah. No, I think yeah, the punks was a bigger.
They must have been first on Ethereum. That must be what I'm confusing it with.
Yeah, I think so.
They were the first well-known. They were definitely the first project I heard about, because at the time I was doing pixel art and posting on Instagram, spending hours on delicate pixel by pixel drawings. And I remember seeing these, going, "What the fuck are they?" Never given it another second thought until a few years later. And I went, "Oh shit, you could get them for free."
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild how things have evolved. It's and we're still so early. I think if there's one big takeaway I'd love to like kind of leave people with, that if they haven't dove into crypto yet, or they've even dipped their toe in, we're still like stupidly early. And if you look at that bell curve of adoption, we're a couple standard deviations to the left. You know, we're in this like early adopter phase. You know, this is the innovation stage, and high risk, high reward, right? So it is a scary time in terms of there's a lot of instability and things can change really quickly. And depending on who you talk to, there's a totally different lens of the crypto space. You know, I'm like an Ethereum Axie maxi. There's a lot of Bitcoin maxis out there that still think Ethereum is some big scam. There's a whole wave of people that are really into the stupid dog coins, the Shiba Inu and the Dogecoin. It's there's the Solana maxis that think Ethereum is, you know, the slow laggard, and that, you know, Solana is the future. There's really a lot of
huge Cardano ADA army.
Yeah, huge Cardano army. There's a lot of very biased lenses out there, and it's hard to get through the information. But a lot of times when these weird things happen, to me, it's just a reminder of we're so early. There's still so much innovation to take place. And that's what I love about it. You know, to me, this is very real. This is like the cutting edge of technology, and it's becoming the bleeding edge of humanity also. I mean, these governance concepts of like these DAOs, you know, a decentralized autonomous organization. People are trying to figure out this new governance model. How can we adapt these trustless systems into better governance? You know, how can we start, you know, I'm American, right? The Constitution's cool. It was really great when they made it, but maybe there's a new way. You know, maybe we should change some things. Maybe we should be open to some of these new systems and how we can, you know, start solving small aspects of the human condition through smart contracts. To me, that's a really fascinating and worthwhile endeavor.
Well, the you was saying that, like, if the founding fathers came back, came to the present and then started reading the Constitution, they'd be like, you know, what the fuck? You haven't changed it?
Yeah, I think that was a Joe Rogan bit, but I did say that the other night. Yeah, if the founding fathers came back, one of the first things they would say is, "You guys didn't write any new shit." I mean, come on, that was the whole point. We left it open. It was like, this is like a living, breathing, and yeah, we've written some amendments, but now it almost feels like the idea of passing an amendment in America is like, what would we ever all agree on enough to actually get that passed? It feels almost impossible. So yeah, and there's obviously people leveraging that for their own gain. I'm like, nope, look, it's written in stone and it can't change, and it's a very regressive but effective type strategy in our current political climate. So yeah, I very much enjoy thinking about the future and how we can get humans to work together effectively without abusing one another. How can we create an economy that's more fair for the whole world and not just a piece of the world? The more I look at this stuff, the more I feel gross about the amount of privilege we have in America specifically, and how blind the average person is to the extremity of the wealth gap in the rest of the world, and how insane the conditions are for a lot of people that, if we can build the right tools. It's the idea of, I'm not into giving people fish as much as I am to try and figure out how to get them the schematics to build a fishing rod. That's where my brain's at, and I think that's the really scalable kind of stuff to try to help the people that need it the most.
Yeah,
I will say it's very admirable what you're doing with Axie and the scholarship. That's great knowing that if folk from certain backgrounds can't afford to get in, they can approach you that way. That's amazing thing you're doing. What would you say to other people who feel like we've just said, it's still early, but what would you say to folk who look at Axie and maybe the price and feel like, oh, I've just missed out? What would you say to them?
You definitely haven't missed out yet. It's all a spectrum, right? I think it's important to try to start. A lot of people look at themselves sort of as like a timeline of present is the furthest point on the right, and then all they can do is look back. I try to think of a timeline of myself in the middle, and then I can look back and I can look forward. And I think trying to think a step ahead, try to forecast for yourself is really important. And remember that still, even in this day and age, most people give in to emotions, and most people panic and sell when it's low, and then don't want to miss out and buy when it's high. So when everyone else is scared and the prices are tanking, that's often the best time to buy. Those are often, like, in those moments, try to position yourself 6 months in the future and say, okay, 6 months from now, when I look back at this, am I going to be punching myself for having not done whatever this opportunity I'm seeing now that I'm scared about? And then I think that framework gives you more tools to kind of, evaluate, am I going to be more upset at the gains that I missed out on because I was too afraid to take the risk? Or does the chance of this going to zero outweigh that kind of FOMO type fear? That's how I try to think about stuff, at least. I try to think about myself in the future, looking back to forecast. And, you're not always going to get it right, but sometimes you just got to dive in. And certainly not financial advice, don't take any undue risk. But it reminds me of the first time I bought a tablet. I had a phone, I had a laptop, and I had a desktop computer. I was like, do I need a tablet? Am I going to use it? Is it actually a useful device? And, you read about it and you read all the specs and you read all these blogs. There comes a certain point where you just have to go fucking buy one and see if you're going to use it. Reading about it is not the same as having it next to you every day. And that's like, is this worth $400? I don't know. And you just have to kind of go for it. So I think some of the blockchain stuff is similar. Using it is different from reading about it. And if you're really curious, you don't have to spend a lot. Put $100 onto Polygon and start playing around with all the different decentralized financial tools and just see how it works and educate yourself. It's pretty cheap education. I always encourage people to just try to engage with it and then decide if you actually want to, spend more or whatever else. I've heard a lot of wealthy kind of advisor type people say 5% of your portfolio in cryptocurrency feels like a pretty safe bet right now. And I think that's a really great starting point for your average person. You know, if it all goes to zero, you're not going to hate yourself if you lose 5% of your portfolio. But if, you know, even 5% of your portfolio going 10x is pretty cool, you know, and then maybe you decide to up that 5 to 10, that kind of stuff. Start slow.
Cool. Well, Andrew, I want to say thank you for joining us on the podcast. You're our very first guest. So it's been much appreciated. I also want to say thank you for being so candid in the way you've responded to everything we've asked. I know it can be a bit personal, but I want to say thank you for that. So if people are watching this and want to reach out and want to get in touch, want to find out more about you, where would be the best place for them to head to?
Yeah, so my online handle is a little funny. Zyori, it's spelled Zyori. Zyori TV is my handle on everything. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and my website is just zyori.tv. So type Zyori into Google and you should get all sorts of fun hits. My book is on Amazon, so you can search there. It's called Surviving Esports. And like I said, kind of the crescendo chapter with some spoilers on my website. Sorry, what was that?
I'm still waiting for my copy.
Yeah, I really fucked up. I meant to bring a bunch with me and I totally forgot. They're sitting, well, in my maybe still standing apartment. So we'll see. I might have to order a few more, but yeah, my bad on that. Sorry.
Fingers crossed everything's still standing back home, mate. But we'll put a link to all those things, all your socials in the description. If anyone's watching us on YouTube, please like the video, please subscribe, please share it around. If you are listening to us on audio, please go check it out on YouTube so you can see us in all our beautiful gloriness on screen. Once again, thank you, Andrew. Cheers, Brandur. We'll speak again soon. And thanks very much. Very enjoyable. Cheers, guys.
Yes, dude.
Thank you.